This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Ben Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, taping this late Monday morning, Pacific Coast time. This is a dramatic one. I'm almost positive we've never had our first guest be in the hospital waiting for the arrival of a child. But this is what's happening. We're making history. Cousin Sal, live from the hospital. How are you?
Hold on. Didn't Artie Lang do this like 4 years ago, or Malcolm Gladwell? No. Maybe I am the first. Wow.
No, yeah, you made history.
I'm doing all right. I guess it's going to be a longer labor. The third kid's supposed to come out fast, but this is boring, but she's not as dilated as they had hoped, and I'm going to be here a while, so I stuck out to do a quick pod, and maybe there might be divorce papers waiting for me when I get back to the room. Who knows?
You know who's fully dilated? The Cowboys.
Terrible.
At what point did you get sucked into the Kyle Orton era?
Finally, is it bad that I was potentially more worried about Romo's epidural earlier in the week than I was my own life? It's probably bad, right? I was sucked in. That was an impossible game for me to watch. It really was, because you know how it is. I come on here and I think I defend Romo more than the Cowboys, and I had a problem with every play. Like, oh, where's this pass rush when Romo's playing? Like, how dare Witten get open for this game? And so when I was still rooting for them, and I was sucked in. And when Orton threw the pick, I was like, well, that sucks, but all right, at least it wasn't a heroic win. Kyle Orton, I don't have to deal with that. And then I get on Twitter and everyone's like, oh, Rome Orton. No, there it is. Why is Romo wearing Orton's jersey? I'm like, okay, I can't win. Is it possible for everyone to go to hell? I don't know what to do.
That is true.
What did you think? Do you think they were getting in field goal range?
I thought it would be a good thing for Romo that Orton self-combusted at the end. It would make people appreciate them, but instead the reaction over the next 16 hours seemed to have been like, oh, it's like Romo was right there, and it's like he can't win even by not playing.
And it's a weird thing, because Tony Romo, I don't know why he's so hateable, but it seemed like people who normally don't root for the Cowboys were rooting for the Cowboys yesterday just to prove that Romo isn't that good. I don't know. Maybe I just got a sense because I'm who I am. But did you feel that too? It was a little strange.
I think it was hard not to root for Kyle Orton.
Yeah.
Anytime the backup QB comes in, NFL history says that you're just the public is just going to root for that person. I think with Frank Reich being the number one all-time example, the big comeback game from 35-3. But I thought he played well. I mean, just removing it from yesterday's game, like, he's certainly one of the best 30 quarterbacks in the league. I mean, he might be like the 27th best quarterback, but he makes plays. He made smart decisions for the most part. It was just a bad pass. He threw it behind the guy, the last pass.
He did a nice job. Unfortunately, now I'm going to have to name my son Brandon Boykin Icano because of the last pick. But yeah, he definitely did a nice job. And I don't think that Romo would have won that game necessarily, but it does seem like the team is cursed, like whoever you put out there. Jerry Jones put the stink on the team, and it's like you bought a haunted house, so now you have to live in it, and it's going to be bad. And and worse yet, we're never getting rid of Jason Garrett. And I think he doesn't want to fire Jason Garrett because, in a weird way, Jason Garrett takes heat off Jerry Jones. Like he takes half the heat. That should be all blame to Jerry Jones, and Jason Garrett eats half of it. And but I don't know. I haven't been paying attention. But how many coaches were fired today? Chudzinski, Schwartz.
5.
Who else got it? 5. Wow.
Yeah, I think 5 in all. Leslie Frazier, Shanahan.
Yeah. And it always seems like a good idea, but then it's like, who are you going to get? Who's replaced? You could talk about Cowher and Gruden and all these guys, and they're just never available. So you end up with someone else's discarded. Well,
that poor guy who took the Browns job. He could have stayed at Carolina as their offensive coordinator, and he would have gotten probably even more credit this year because they did well. And he would have been an even hotter name, and there would have been like 7 jobs open up. I felt bad for that guy. Our buddies at the Browns, I was a little shocked by that one.
And God forbid they give us a heads up, but it might have been something even more internal than that. Maybe Haslam, the owner, had a problem with him, because it seemed like everyone else in that organization got a pass for this year's Browns, right?
He was in a really tough spot where you trade your starting running back, like in week 4, you have a whole bunch of different terrible quarterbacks, and when Brian Hoyer is like the shining light of the season, like what does that tell you? But at the same time, they really did fall apart in the last 8 games. I thought they were tanking intentionally.
Yeah.
I picked against them probably the last 4 from the Pats game on, because I was like, oh, they'll go for the draft pick now. But I think they might have just been really bad, and they might have just gotten worse and worse.
I wonder if he was thinking that. I mean, if I were him, I'd get up at the press conference and be like, whoa. We were supposed to win some of these last 6 games or 8 games? I didn't get that impression. No, I would have done things way differently.
Yeah, they definitely fell apart last week. Last week was a mail-in in the second half, but I thought they were better than 4-12. But it's weird. I watched that whole season thinking it was all part of their master plan to get a top 5 pick, and they like this guy and whatever. But I hate criticizing our buddies, but 1 year doesn't sound like enough time for a coach. It doesn't sound like enough time for anybody. I mean, you make your mistakes in that first year. You learn from the mistakes.
Yeah. You said, if you just diagram without even putting a name or a theme to the situation, like traded the running back week 4, went through 3 quarterbacks over and over and over, and just bad, it would seem like you'd get a pass. But
yeah, I mean, let's be honest. The bottom line is there's only 6 or 7 coaches that matter. I think the NBA is like this too. You have a bunch of it's a merry-go-round for 24 of the spots, and then you have somebody like Belichick, who year after year goes 11-5 or 12-4, and doesn't matter who's on the team or how many people are injured. And there's 6 guys like that.
It's true. Yep.
But back to your boys for a second. One thing that did happen was the Eagles somehow covered any conceivable tease. And the one thing I'll remember about yesterday, pretty much all the bets you would have made going into yesterday covered. It was a magical gambling day. It really was.
It was the greatest money line parlay favorite Sunday, however you phrase that day ever, I think. Yeah. It really was. Because if you throw out the Green Bay Chicago game, which was going to be a toss up, throw out the Arizona Card San Francisco game, which was, who knew who was playing for what. And I mean, I think 11 big favorites won. The Dolphins were a pitfall, but if you stay away from that, 11 big favorites won, and most of them covered, right?
Yeah, it reminded me. I actually went back and read my 04, somewhere in the end of that 04 season, which we talk about in the pod sometimes, when just week after week the good teams took care of business. All the good teams took care of business yesterday. Every 3-team, 2-team you would have won. The one that the screw job one was Miami, and I texted you, I think on Saturday, and because I love that scenario of San Diego getting the playoff spot, and I couldn't believe it was 6-1. Cincinnati had to win money line. Jets had to beat Miami. Then Pittsburgh had to beat the floundering Browns, and then you had San Diego against Kansas City's second string. So the early games, we stepped in.
It was a huge pull for you. Just when I thought you had checked out of NFL 2013, you come up with this 6-1 money line parlay, and it freaking hit. Unreal.
And we did the Steelers with a couple things. We were all over the place. It was our one good weekend of the year, but
we had Ronda Rousey with the Steelers and Patriots, crying out loud. That's not even a joke.
Yeah, most of that is true. We did have that. We did not have money on Anderson Silva's broken leg though.
No.
But we play this parlay perfectly, and then all of a sudden Kansas City's second string is beating San Diego the entire game. And it just looks like the all-time classic Bill and Sal, where we should have hedged and we didn't, because, of course, KC's second string isn't going to win in San Diego. All they have to do is win, they make the playoffs. And Chase Daniel looks like one of the best 10 QBs in the league. And we're watching and we're watching and we're watching, and then we never hedge. And then it comes down to this suck-up field goal, and he miraculously misses it. It's the first gambling break we've probably had, I'm going to say, since 2006.
Yeah. And that line went from 10 to 14, right when the early games ended, when the team, charges, all of a sudden it meant something. And Yeah,
Right.
that was. But it made me rethink. I know we won and everything, but it made me rethink when one wild card team, second string, is just as good as, at least yesterday, the second wild card team, first
Yeah, that's
string.
weird.
Maybe we should just go with one wild card. I know it doesn't work like that all the time, but I'm bummed out how the Chargers made it. Really, lots of breaks between.
And I like that
missed field goal.
Damashek's coming on after you, and I admire. He handled himself with a lot of class yesterday on Twitter. Made the point that Pittsburgh didn't deserve to make it at 8-8 anyway, and
Right.
It's like you put yourself in this position by starting out 2-6. The one thing with the Chargers in the playoffs, they can move the ball, and they can. So it's not going to be. We see so many times in round one where the team and then they score 7 points in the game or 10, and I would think that's not going to happen to the Chargers. On the other hand, they played the Bengals earlier in the year and it was 17-10 final.
Yeah, I was in Vegas for that one. Yeah, they did not look good at all, but somehow Philip Rivers is the highest completion percentage for a quarterback in the season. It does seem bizarre how they can stay in these games.
I've personally watched 4 Bengals games this year where Andy Dalton looked like absolute dog poop for 3 quarters and did everything he could to blow the game, and everybody else in that Bengals team bailed him out in a variety of ways and hid the fact that he stunk. And I just can't imagine how they're going to keep going in the playoffs with him playing like that. He had 4 interceptions yesterday.
Yeah, he did not show up yesterday. But they are a better home team than they are. I think they're in the elite home team now. Wouldn't you say? Like they're scoring between 30 and 45, no matter who they go up against at home.
But they're scoring these points on. It's almost like these other teams are doing really stupid things. I wonder.
Right.
There's going to be a game where the other team's not making mistakes, and Andy Dalton's going to actually have to make some plays. I don't trust him.
Right.
Let's do.
Let me just ask you that because that's interesting. Because normally we salivate at this wild card weekend game. We love to bet against the quarterback on the road who doesn't belong there, and I'm looking at him. I don't see any that I don't trust completely. That I don't have some trust in. I'm saying like KC at Indy. I wouldn't go against Alex Smith there. Certainly, Drew Brees is capable at Philly, even though they have trouble scoring. Rivers would be the one you would go against. It wouldn't probably be Kaepernick at Green Bay. So, but which of those 4 road quarterbacks are you least confident in?
I don't trust Alex Smith.
Really?
Yeah, I don't trust him. I think he could, in the right situation, could fall apart. I also don't trust Dalton. It's funny. We always send each other the lines on Sunday night because I just assume I'm going to see him at some point. I somehow never saw the lines. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, I'm going to be finding out on the podcast what the lines were. I sent you my guesses because we always send each other the guesses just in case we stumble across them.
This is even more exciting than my wife giving birth in 8 minutes.
Well, that's why we should hurry this along. But I predicted 3 road dogs.
Yeah.
So first of all, that we should mention they picked San Diego at Cincy. That's the early Saturday game, right?
No, that's early Sunday.
I'm sorry.
The first time Cincy isn't the early Saturday games. The ratings loser, I think, as far as NFL is concerned. And
so
it was Cincinnati. It was Cincinnati, Houston the last 2 years. KC at Indy starts things off at 1:35 p.m. Eastern.
So CBS has the early games in both days?
No, NBC I think has Saturday, and then CBS has the AFC
I see
Sunday,
what you mean.
and the Fox has NFC Sunday.
So both days the NFL decided the NFC matchup was a lot more exciting and favorable to ratings.
It's sort of been like that for, I think, the last 4 years. I thought maybe they would go the Saturday night game. I thought they'd go San Fran at Green Bay, seeing as NBC just had Philly, but I guess Philly's just too big a market. That's the
I think KC Indy is a better game than Cincy San Diego. I'm surprised. I thought for sure Cincy San Diego would be the Saturday early Shaky Pizzas game.
Yeah, I agree. All
right, so KC Indianapolis. What did I say? KC by 1.5?
You said KC by 1.5. I said Indy by 2. They had beaten them, and now they're home. It's Indy by 2.5, so I get that one.
It's Indy by 2.5.
See, now you like Alex Smith all of a sudden on the road.
I'm very surprised by that. So basically Vegas is saying we liked how Indy is playing We like how Indy played these last 3 weeks. We don't trust Kansas City at all. Kansas City's 0-5 against the playoff teams this year. And we think Indy takes care of business. Andrew Luck is the best player in the field.
I think so. It's weird because Vegas hasn't really trusted either of these teams all year, but I think they're forced to make a line. So, yeah, they went with 2.5.
I'm stunned. I thought I originally was going to say KC 2.5, and then I thought, Indy's playing well, maybe it'll be 1.5. But I never thought KC wouldn't be favored. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, I was surprised. Well, I said 2, but I was like, well, this is just one I'm going to be wrong about because I know there's going to be a road favorite here, and I thought this would be the one that was wrong. But I just read the Chiefs signed Anderson Silva as a new place kicker.
I do. Well, you saw that it's also the refs blew that call. They didn't realize the 7 people. Somehow they saw the Pats guy who was shaded over to the Jets long snapper that cost us the 1 seed, even though it had no direct bearing in the play. But yet that was completely illegal, and they missed that. You got to be kidding me. The refs, I thought the refs were terrible this season.
They really were, and what a way to kick off their full season back from the replacement refs. But yeah, I worry about San Diego. That's another break they had. Obviously, the second string they're playing, the field goal missing on the field. I worry about we're going to bet too much against them, and 3 weeks from now they're still going to be alive. So I don't know.
Well, it is one of those. I can't remember specifically an example of this, but it is one of those situations where you can imagine the AFC title game and them replaying the suck-up kick and being like, this team could have been out of the playoffs. Now they're playing to go to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it sounds like talking head guy needs to be involved there.
Oh, that could be it. Yeah.
Let me tell you something. This is why you cannot rest for 1 second in the National Football League, Sal. Not for 1 second. One play goes one way, all of a sudden you're in the Super Bowl. San Diego is in control of their own destiny right now.
I believe you, Kirk Dilfer Herbstreit. Whatever you say.
Casey goes 11-5. But played their second string in the last game.
Yeah.
And now they are getting points in Indianapolis. So Indianapolis beat 5 good teams this year, right? They beat Denver.
They beat San Francisco.
Right. They beat a couple other good ones. They beat
no one really in their division was good, but yeah.
They beat San Diego, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They beat Kansas City.
Right. Yeah, they beat Kansas City.
They beat somebody else good. Yeah, they've had some good wins, and they've had some horrible losses. The one thing that's interesting about them is it seems like they've changed what they're doing offensively.
Right.
There's a lot more no huddle, a lot more like ball in Luck's hands, and I liked watching them the last couple weeks. I think
Luck was lost. He was lost without Reggie Wayne for the first couple weeks, and I agree. They made some kind of adjustment. So
I agree. All right, Saturday night.
Saturday night, New Orleans at Philly.
I probably got this wrong, too. I had the Saints by 3.
Yeah, you did get it wrong. I said Philly by 3, and it's Philly by 2.5. And, I guess too many people are betting against New Orleans on the road. Vegas doesn't want to get slammed again.
Is that a borderline nobody believes in us for the Saints? Because they're a better team than the Eagles.
I watched a lot of the Tampa Bay game, a game they needed to win to make the playoffs, and I don't think their defense is as good as it was in Week 7. I don't know what Rob Ryan. I know that Kenny Vaccaro's out with a busted leg, but now they're just outscoring teams. That's just how they have to do it, and I wonder if that works on the road.
Yeah, normally you would say Saints by 3. I kind of like the Eagles, but it's almost like everybody has wisened up now to the Saints on the road thing. I'm still surprised they're not favored. It's a slap in the face a little bit to Breeze and Peyton. Because
it's good. Yeah.
The Eagles barely looked competent last night.
Yeah, I agree.
That Cowboys team, who was your second best defensive player last night?
Hatcher, I would say. Or is he first? I don't know. What do you say, DeMarcus? What are you saying?
I don't know.
It would have to be Hatcher. Yeah.
That defense was you had guys out there I'd never even heard of.
They stepped up. I'd tell you, everyone was right. When Romo's out, the defense really steps up.
Well,
I don't get it.
The good news is Romo will be 34 next year coming off 2 major back surgeries. So I think it'll be fine. And you're bringing Jason Garrett back.
That's the other thing. They said the first back surgery was supposed to get like some kind of wart or something off his back, some kind of cyst. And then now you're right, 33 years old, 2 back surgeries, and his wife is at the game, but he's not yesterday. Everything about that game infuriated me.
I actually had a quick thought for you because I know you guys have settled on a name for this baby yet that's about to be born and might even be born by the time people have heard this podcast.
Right.
In my opinion, there's still time to change your mind. What about Dallas Iacono?
Really?
Yeah, why not? Like, you had bad luck with Romo. Like, it seemed like he was going to be better than he was. Romo was the middle name of your middle son.
That's not bad.
But it's hard to have bad luck with a franchise. Like, worst case scenario, they move, but the Dallas Cowboys are never moving. Like, you name the kid Dallas,
right?
You're in with it. You don't have to worry about anything happening other than Jerry Jones owning the team, somehow being able to regenerate his brain cells, being able to live till he's 150.
Right. That would be bad. No, you're right. And I could always say it was for the Mavericks. When the kid's like 40, he won't have to explain himself.
I think Dallas is a really strong name. I remember in The Outsiders, I think Matt Dillon played Dallas. Do you remember The Outsiders? Right. Yeah, and they called him Dally. You can call him Dally as a nickname. Hey, don't rule out Dallas. Maybe throw that at your wife right as the epidural medication's wearing off and she's like in a haze. That's when they're the most vulnerable. Yeah, try to work on that.
Dallas Flex Iacono. That could be all right.
Dallas, Orton. Yeah, Jerry is definitely out and Kyle is out, I think.
Right. Maybe Hustle and Bustle Mad Muscle is fighting hard to get in there.
All right, so we have...
all right, so Sunday at 1 Eastern, San Diego at Cincy.
I probably got this wrong, too. I had the Bengals by 7.5.
You had 7.5. I had 7. It is actually 7.
Oh, so you're killing me this week. Wow, congratulations. Congratulations on this more than the child.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, they're neck and neck. But, I don't know. I mean, there's no 2-team teaser. There are no more 3-team teasers. I don't know how you make money this week.
That's probably good for us that there are no teasers.
Yeah, you're right. But Cincy with a bowl game or something?
Were we sure San Diego's not going to make the AFC title game because they got that stupid missed kick? Why am I afraid of them?
No, we should stay away.
That seems like a lot of points for Cincy, but they've covered it time and time again at home.
Yeah, I was trying to figure, what did they give Baltimore yesterday? Another team that had to win to get in. They give them only 6.5?
They gave them 6.5 and they covered.
Yeah,
week after week after week, they've been covering these home spreads. I think so 4 times but in the last 2 months before that game yesterday, they've gone over 40 at home. And they went 34 yesterday. Well,
I forget who their backup is, but they should, then maybe they don't do this. Marvin Lewis might not be up for this. I would start the second string, at least for the first half.
I like it. I like it. You lay the smackdown early.
That's the way to embarrass it.
The big winner of the weekend was Chase Daniel, who continues to look confident anytime he plays football. I remember watching him in an exhibition game 2 years ago and being like, oh, my God, who is this guy? This guy's great. Yeah. He's gonna have a moment with somebody at some point.
He came from a great wide open college offense, and it's probably bad that game yesterday happened when it did because there's 10 capable quarterbacks coming out this draft, but he could have been offered a Matt Flynn contract by somebody somewhere.
Yeah, you're right. Well, don't give up hope. There's still time.
That's true. And then the late Sunday game, 4:40 p.m. Eastern, San Fran at Green Bay.
Great one. This is a great one. I'm excited for this one. I loved having Aaron Rodgers back in my life. Not in time to save either of my fantasy teams, but that was such a great play to win the game.
It was exciting.
It was like maybe 5 quarterbacks make that specific play, avoid Peppers, make the quick throw like that, get enough steam on it. It was just magnificent.
And to Randall Reggie Cobb, who I think he can make the Hall of Fame. We'll still call him Reggie Cobb, but yeah, both those guys coming back. Maybe this is the old Packers team. You picked. I'll tell you the line. You picked San Fran by 3. Yeah, I went Green Bay by 1. You were exactly right. It's San Fran by 3.
And it should be because their defense really wasn't good in that game. And they, I don't trust the coach either. I couldn't believe he didn't go for 2. Damashek defended it. Just in the last 15 minutes, you have to try to tie the score over being down 1.
Sure. I mean, I don't see the other, and I get the math of the other way. If they kick a field goal, they're up 4, and then you have to score a touchdown, it goes 7. But it doesn't really happen that much. At some point, you have to give in and go for the 2, I think.
The argument against it is that if they score if you're down 2 and then they score a touchdown, you're down 2 scores, and you can't take that risk. And the argument is the Packers had a bad defense, and even if they're down 8, at least they could go for 2. But you still have to go for 2 anyway. I'd rather tie the game immediately and know that whatever, and then your defense has a better idea what to do.
Here's what I was surprised about. San Fran, late in the fourth quarter against Arizona, they know they're not going to win the division. Seattle's up 20-3 or whatever. They're playing for 5th or 6th. So if they win, like they did, they go to Green Bay. If they lose, they go to Philly or Dallas.
Yeah,
I would have taken a loss. I definitely wouldn't have risked injury for these, hard-hitting Arizona defense. Having your starters out there, I think they made the wrong decision.
Well,
I would have sat those guys.
But think about it, though. Well, yeah, and then on top of it, that means they have to go to Seattle in round 2. Right? If they beat Green Bay, they go to Seattle in round 2 unless the 6th seed wins. The 6th seed is New Orleans.
Right. New Orleans. Yeah. So I think at Philly is an easier game for them than this. I might be wrong.
I don't think – I like Philly's offense, but I just think any good team should be able to move the ball on them. What did Orton threw 354 last night?
Yeah, he went crazy.
Yeah.
He went crazy.
So what's left for you now that other than having a third kid in a couple hours? What's left? What's left for you sports wise? Just gambling?
Yeah, just gambling. Now we have. You wanted to go. You realize you were wrong. We have to go Finland now, right?
I had the wrong team. I'd like to apologize to the BS Report listeners. I had remembered being told Sweden, but it was actually Finland. I got Sweden and Finland confused.
Do you think a lot of people bet Sweden based on that?
No, I don't think anyone did the bet yet. I don't think anyone listens to me in Olympic hockey. But the hot goalie was Tuukka Rask, the Bruins goalie, who's actually playing well. Lundqvist isn't even playing that well. My brain was screwed last week. But I meant Finland, and Finland's odds were pretty good too. But we have that. We have that to look forward to. We have some football bets to look forward to.
Bet any Scandinavian country. Just cover them all. We'll be right about one of them.
We got a
lot of football left.
We have the abject hatred of your wife for you that you stepped away from the delivery room for this podcast. We have that.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be fun. You better go back. We're going to call Damashek.
I will go back. Go to Damashek. Tell him I said hi. I just want to promote. I went 3 for 3, piggybacking your column, my prop bets. New Orleans over 30, Denver -7 the first half, and Murray under 19.5 carries. Of course, Jason Garrett's going to screw that up. So
that was great.
On Friday. Yeah.
And let me tell you something. People point to Tony Romo with a herniated disc throwing that great pass to keep the Cowboys alive as a heroic moment. To me, this podcast was the most heroic Cowboys moment in 2013.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, my friend.
You inspire all of us. Good luck with this child. Say hi to your wife in the delivery room. And long live epidurals everywhere. Good luck.
All right, buddy. Take care. Happy New Year. Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, we're going to call our friend Damashek to see how he's dealing with the Steelers' non-playoff appearance. But first, a word from our good friends at Subway.
Get your own Subway Big Hot Pastrami. Tender, juicy cuts of pepper-crusted beef on freshly baked bread. Enjoy yours with pickles, mustard, and bubbly melty cheese. Or try the Big Philly cheesesteak, both part of the Big Cheese Duo. Subway. Eat fresh.
All right, and now from one depressed fan to another. This one is not in the delivery room. He's just licking his wounds after one of the rare stomach punch losses where a team wasn't actually playing. Or you're watching another team, you're with your playoff fate in the line. Now, Damashek, Dave Dameshek, by the way, NFL.com, NFL Network. You said the Steelers at 8-8 didn't even deserve the playoff spot, so you weren't going to get too upset about it. I knew that wasn't true.
It's not true. I'm just trying to rationalize. Don't you understand? This is what you have to do. And I wasn't in the delivery room, but I did have to spend several hours in the ER late last night after the trauma that Ryan Suckup and the referees put me through in Jack Murphy Stadium. I mean, really, an all-time crazy day. And I don't want to say it was bad because obviously it was good for the teams that won. But, I mean, really, this feels to me like, and it was very generous of you as your team, once again, muzzle tov to you. After all the craziness, one of the craziest seasons ever, as it seems like we say every year about the NFL, but anyway, 2013, plain insane. Once again, there sit Peyton Manning and Tom Brady with their teams in the 1 and 2 seeds in the AFC. It seems like it's been that way every year for the last decade. Maybe it even has, but really, what stands out to me more than anything else is the headline, is the painful losses. Who had it worse, Simmons? I mean, really, Steelers fans at 8-8, that's the only thing is that, well, listen, should a team that goes 500 even make the playoffs? That's the only rationalization I can come up with. But, of course, Ryan Succop's name, for better or worse, now will go down in history on the great list of Pittsburgh sports villains. I mean, I can reel them off, as I'm sure you can with Boston sports villains. Billy Goheen, Scotty Reynolds, Tom Brady, I have to include on that list.
Thank you.
And so on. Now I had Ryan Succop, It just worked. But I still, and then the Cowboys, same old, whether it was Romo or Orton. I think Bears fans had it worse. How say you?
Couple thoughts. One, I think it's fascinating that the refs, so that the Pats didn't get the number 1 seed basically because they lined up a little too close to the Jets' long snapper on a play that had no impact whatsoever on the kick. And we don't get the number 1 seed basically because of that. You don't get into the playoffs because what the Chargers did was a much worse cheat. They have this new rule in place. You're not supposed to load one side of the line or the other on kicks. They do it anyway, and all of the refs miss it somehow. And if they catch it, now that's a 36-yard field goal, and there's probably no way he misses that.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, Bill, they are just, we haven't reached a place in society technologically where there are cameras on the scene and people watching and millions of eyes looking at these things to fix these things. Oh, wait a second. We do have that technology.
Right.
So how are we continuing to leave it to these middle-aged old men looking to go under a hood, looking at a little tube TV that may or may not be in color, when we could dispatch it off to some news center with, 3 or 5 different objective eyeballs away from the drama and the energy in that stadium and make the right call? Why are we not doing that? It has now cost both of our teams. Obviously, mine more severely than yours.
The other thing is, it would have been probably, I don't know, remove your Pittsburgh inobjectivity here. Would it have been more fun to have Phil Rivers in the playoff or Ben Roethlisberger?
Well, Phil Rivers is a treat. There's no question about that.
He really is. I love Roethlisberger too, though.
Well, that's right. Yeah, he's a lot of fun, and yeah, I do like Phil Rivers. Listen, I'm conflicted because I've said it before. I mean, no man should ever wear a bolo tie. It's a funny affect, but I mean, really, there is no situation. Ducky tried it in Pretty in Pink. It didn't work. Many have tried it and failed. Phil Rivers is not going to buck that trend. That said, listen, I absolutely can see the Chargers going in there this weekend and winning the game, of course. I mean, they lost by a touchdown the first time they hooked up, but here's the thing to me is, personally, I've spent a fair amount of time saying that Peyton Manning, for all of his great deeds, is not going to win the Super Bowl this year or ever again. It almost, the irony of all his greatness and his great stats and everything is he still has to play now at home. I think it's more interesting, in fact. I know you would rather have everything running through Foxborough, but don't you like the idea of Brady and company going out into Mile High? Isn't the pressure always greater, or almost always greater, on the number 1 seed because, by definition, they're supposed to win the game? Peyton Manning does not deal well. I know a lot of people, hard-boiled journalists who go crazy. Dave, you don't know what you're talking about. The fact is, Peyton Manning does come up short in January in the cold and under pressure. Both of those things are going to be in full effect, whether it's Tom Brady or anyone else going into Mile High. I would like to have seen the Steelers get in, because I really do think they would have knocked off the Bengals. I just really believe that once again, and, mystique and all that, I know these are grown men who don't care what happened in the 70s or 80s and don't carry with them the history, painful or successful, like we fans do. But I still think that would get in their heads enough. Marvin Lewis's personal experience with the Steelers would be bad enough that the Steelers would steal that one, which would then mean the Steelers in Mile High against Peyton Manning, and I'd love to see that, even though the last time the Steelers played a playoff game there was against Tim Tebow and they got embarrassed.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. It would probably come back to haunt me, but I'm not sure it matters where the Patriots play. They can win on the road. They've blown multiple playoff games at home. They're 8-0 at home this year. I would think the one thing with Denver is the altitude, but it certainly didn't bother Baltimore, who had an old team last year, and they went in there and they won in double overtime, basically. I just don't know if Denver's built for cold weather playoff football. That's my big question with them. I'm not like the Pats. I know can play a little smash mouth, and they've been there a million times and all that stuff. They've won a bunch of cold weather games. It would seem like Denver is just better in a shootout type of game, and over again, we don't see that in January as much. It's always more physical.
Yeah, exactly right. And, Jim Irsay was sort of, I don't know, I guess it seemed like a lot of people laughed at him when he was talking about it at the time just before the Colts and Broncos played their game. But he's right. I mean, the team is entirely built around Peyton Manning. I mean, and as are, to some degree, at least, the Ravens. You start paying guys $20 million, and that's 20% of your overall cap. You're going to be deficient in other areas. That's what Jim Irsay said when we have to build a more well-rounded team. And right, Peyton Manning now, when you take on the role, everybody, the fans, the defenders, Broncos fans and defenders of Peyton Manning or Tony Romo, suddenly become very socialist. They become very egalitarian after the game when the main man has thrown the game-deciding pick and thrown the season away by saying, he's just one man. What about, you can't, what about the defensive back who let Jacoby Jones get behind him? And so on. Wait a second. Isn't he paid $20 million, Peyton Manning? The game is on him. It's not on the second-year DB who blew the coverage. If they're all equal, he's just one member of a 53-man roster. Well, if that's the case, then they should all make the same, right? No, he is the main man. For better or worse, the Broncos are one of those teams that have decided everything is on 18 shoulders, and it's a specious decision based on what he's done over the years. Here's his chance. I think the big thing in December was Peyton Manning saying, the narrative. Whoever wrote that narrative can stick it where the sun don't shine. As I've said to you before, it's not fiction. It's not a work of fiction. It's your autobiography, Peyton Manning. You've penned it over the last decade and a half. Now change it, because here comes because if you don't do it this year, you're a year older, and then you're 39. I mean, really, this is it for Peyton Manning. And for that matter, how many more years does Tom Brady have? It seems sort of Shakespearean that I don't think either one of those guys is going to win this year. Even though in an AFC, there's not a team that you really point at and say, that's definitely. I mean, who do you like out of the AFC? It's really hard to make any sense of who the best team is if you accept the idea that Peyton Manning does, in fact, fail in January over and over again.
Well, the Von Miller part of this is really tough for them. Because I didn't think their defense was very good. And he was the one guy I was afraid of, and you had to plan whatever you were doing to kind of account for him. I just keep, look at the last 3 years of scores, right? These are the conference title game scores. 49ers 28, Falcons 24, Ravens 28, Patriots 13. So that was last year. 2011, Pats 23, Ravens 20, Giants 20, 49ers 17. 2010, Packers 21, Bears 14, Steelers 24, Jets 19. Now, in 09, they were more high scoring because I think at least one of those was in a dome. But just for the most part, it just seems like as the playoffs go along, you don't have these shootouts the same way. Like Vikings Saints was that overtime game in 09. It was 31-28, but that was in the dome. Colts 30, Jets 17. That was also inside. And also you forget, by the time we play these conference games, it's week 20 of the season. These guys are banged up. They've lost a lot of players. And I think it's a legitimate argument to say Manning is the greatest regular season quarterback of all time. I think you could say that, make a case for it.
Completely agree with that, yes.
I would concede it, but if you talk about who are the greatest playoff quarterbacks of all time, I just don't think he's in that handful conversation. A lot of that has to do with circumstance. A lot of it has to do with where your team was at that specific time, whether you were home, whether you were inside. I get all that. But I think he needs a second Super Bowl to clinch being the greatest quarterback of all time. He's not there yet. 25 years from now, nobody is going to know who the greatest quarterback of all time was. You can make a case for 7 guys.
I completely agree, and it's people have made the point before, but it really is the same thing as the steroid era in baseball. The numbers are so juiced. Does 55 mean, or 54, whatever, all those yards and everything else? What do they count for? So everybody is. Even Peyton would point that out, and in fact said he thinks Tom Brady will break those numbers next year. I mean, it's not about what Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or the kind of numbers they put. That's what Matt Stafford does, or Tony Romo, or any of those guys.
Breeze.
It's as though I know it matters because fantasy football is prominent, and so everybody cares about that. But really, if that's all it comes down to is us gathering around the computer and swooning at the numbers, then why do they continue to conduct the playoffs every year? I mean, that is ultimately, people like to play fast and loose with that about like how many rings the quarterback has, and when it doesn't fit their argument, then they say, "Oh, so Eli Manning's better than Peyton?" No, but it was definitely more clutch. Those two things can be mutually exclusive. Peyton Manning, you have to game plan for it week in and week out, but when the game's on the line, he's the main man. It is the same thing as at the end of Superman saying to Jimmy Olsen, "Hey, I've done a lot from here on out, but up to this point. But Jimmy Olsen, can you take us home from here? Because I'm not going to rise to the occasion." You positioned yourself as the star. You are the guy that has gotten them there. You must, again, it is Shakespearean tragedy when you elevate your team to that point and then don't come through. It's Barry Bonds in the playoffs, at least until the last couple of go-rounds with the Giants. You cannot then say, "Well, I got us this far. You can't really hang it on my shoulders." Yes, we can. That's exactly the narrative, Peyton, as you like to put it. That's the narrative that you have written.
Well, and I think people always, they talk about the postseason record. What is it, like 9-10, something like that?
9-11, I believe.
9-11. Now, 9-11 isn't great anyway if you're the greatest quarterback of all time. The part that I think hurts the argument for him is they were favorites in a lot of those games. And in some cases, big favorites. And a lot of those games, some of them were home, and this is the same thing with Brady, right? Brady lost the Super Bowl as a 14-point favorite. Mm-hmm. He had an 18-0 team, and he put up 17 points in that Super Bowl. The Giants kicked their ass around. If Brady wins that game, his career is discussed in a totally different way. So some of it's chance, but I do think that the fact that Manning has come up short as the favorite a lot of times at home has not really helped him. I'm looking at the game logs right now, but like last year, what were they giving, 6-7 points to Baltimore?
I don't remember what that was, but I do.
Right.
But I completely agree with your point. People will then respond to me by saying, "Well, the sample size isn't big enough, 9-11 over the course of his postseason, or when he's outdoors, he wins." I'm trying to think of what the numbers are exactly, but they're under 500 for sure. And people say, "Well, that's the sample size when it's under 40 degrees." Yeah, listen, I am fond of, as opposed to most people who favor, facts and inside sources, I go with reckless speculation, as you know. But in this case, I'm going strictly by the numbers, and this is where I'm getting beaten up, is you don't know what you're talking. The numbers are the numbers. I mean, he wins. This is a guy who wins roughly 70% of all games he's ever played, and yet when he gets in against better competition and in cold conditions, he fails more than half the time. That's just a fact. It's not a small sample size or anything else. I think the thing is really, like you said about the regular season thing, I think it's completely legit that there are certain styles, there are certain players, there are certain teams that are suited to the regular season, but it just does not translate. It's not like they're cursed or that they're chokers necessarily. But I mean, you look at Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine and what they did in the regular season. What they did in July against the stinking Padres does not work against top-line batting orders. And, you know, their numbers aren't apocalyptically bad. They don't suddenly become pitchers with ERAs over 6 or anything, but it does go up enough, and especially when the run totals go down in the postseason, it's especially bad for both those guys. But you know, the Atlanta Braves are the regular season success. It's not a coincidence that they only won one World Series. The Pitt Panthers basketball team under Ben Howland and now Jamie Dixon. What's it been now? 12 years. They're always a top seed. They've been a number 1 seed a few times. They've been a top 2 or 3 seed any number of times, always against the best competition. Come the postseason, their style, which is to grind you out, doesn't work. It's sort of the opposite of what you're saying. Whereas the NFL games go from high scoring to lower scoring in the postseason, it's the other way around in college basketball, where the teams do not grind you out as much and play as physically in the postseason with those referees. And ergo, Pitt never does anything in the tournament. Same thing with Dave Manning. It's not a choke job. His style doesn't lend itself, especially with a reduced arm strength, it doesn't lend itself to postseason success.
Well, here is 11 losses in the playoffs, started with 99. These are just the amount of points his team put up. 16 in 1999. 17 in 2000, 0 in 2002, 14 in 03, 3 in 04, 18 in 05. In 06, they won the Super Bowl. 24 in 07, 17 in 08, 17 in 09, 16 in 2010, and then last year at 35. So this is a guy who...
He wants to Mark Sanchez. It's not like just Bill Belichick has cracked some code in bringing down Peyton Manning. I mean, obviously, it's more than just that. I mean, he's lost to some horribly mediocre or worse QBs and teams in the playoffs. Yeah,
as big favorites. And you know, I think you could argue it both ways. I don't think anybody can argue against him being the greatest regular season quarterback. The postseason thing, I know what the counter argument is, and I think as we head into 2014, people argue about sports. Like the old days in 2012, it was more about like coming up with an argument and arguing the hell out of it, almost like politics. And now as we head into 2014, it's almost like you have to be middle of the road, present both sides in every argument. And I think you can present both sides for this one. I just know what I watched, and I think it's harder to do what he does in the playoffs than it is to do in the regular season. The analogy I would use is in basketball. You see these teams all the time, and you know that they're one type of team in the regular season, the first couple rounds, but you also know what it takes to win in the finals. And I watch a team right now like the Clippers or the Warriors or Portland, and I think all three of those teams can make the conference finals and maybe even the finals, but ultimately they're not going to win the title with the teams they have. Because in the finals, you need to be able to get defensive stops. That's what we learned year after year after year after year. Mm-hmm. And if you can't get those stops and if you can't ratchet it up on defense, you are not winning the NBA title. And, you know, I look at this Denver team. Maybe we're headed toward an era in football where just one team outscores the other and defense becomes relatively irrelevant. Maybe it's this season when that starts. But from what we just watched over the last 15 years, you have to be able to play different types of styles to win the Super Bowl. And that's what we really haven't seen from them.
Yeah, that's right. And again, you know, it's this thing where the apologists will say, well, he doesn't have a defense. You know, well, yeah, you're going to be deficient in other areas when you put $20 million into one spot on the field, into one guy. That is, by definition, going to be what happens unless you have impossibly good luck and skill in drafting guys around him. Yeah, I mean, completely agree with you about that.
Yeah, and in 06 when they won, 06 is a shining moment. And let's face it, if they don't come back from the 07, in January 07, they don't come back from, I think it was like 20 down against the Pats, come back in the second half, just a brilliant comeback. He was unbelievable. He was terrifying. If he doesn't have that game, imagine if he had no Super Bowls right now.
Well, listen, here's the difference. Again, narrative, I keep using the word because Peyton likes it, and it's caught on like wildfire, but it is soon to give way to the word legacy over the coming weeks. Thank goodness at least elite has been set aside. Maybe until Andy Dalton goes on a run, because if Andy Dalton goes on a run and wins in Mile High, then suddenly elite will rear its ugly head once again. But for now, right. Narrative and legacy are what it's all about. But yeah, listen, I think that you talk about the 06 for him. First of all, here's the narrative. The difference between Peyton Manning and Dan Marino is this. Marino played in the Super Bowl against Joe Montana and lost. Peyton Manning played in the Super Bowl and beat Rex Grossman. That's the difference. It should have an asterisk next to it if you beat Rex Grossman. It's going to count for half. Like when Brady Trophy shouldn't have the football on top of it. You should just get the stand or something until you beat a real team. Rex Grossman, indeed. And by the way, Dominic Rhodes was the MVP of that Super Bowl, not Peyton Manning. I'll tell you, you talk about the shootout thing, and I do think it's outmoded to some degree. Obviously, the 49ers got to the Super Bowl last year, and they have close to what you would call, or at least in the 21st century, a dominant defense, even though no such thing really exists anymore. But I think it's again outmoded to say you need a dominant defense to win. I think the only thing that has slowed that from fully becoming the way that everybody operates is that the Giants 2 years ago, when the Packers were 15-1, the Packers got all those passes in Lambeau, and Hakeem Nicks got the Hail Mary before the half. If that doesn't happen, Aaron Rodgers goes to the Super Bowl and plays your Patriots, and the final score that would have been the 31st and 32nd defenses playing one another. Brady versus Rodgers at the top of their respective games. Final score 132-129. A combined 27 touchdown passes are thrown, and now there would be no one would ever talk about defense again.
Where does Manning? Both of us are old enough to remember having seen basically everybody from Terry Bradshaw on. 75 is like the first Super Bowl I can remember. So I can remember Bradshaw and Staubach. I can remember Dan Fouts.
You remember that? It's sad, and I don't remember those first. The first one I remember was Cowboys over the Broncos in the Dome. That's the first Super Bowl I remember.
I remember Sammy White. Whatever year Sammy White was, that was the first one I remember. So I think that was 10 or 11.
The year before.
I love Sammy White. Sammy White was my dude. Where does Manning rank? Like, if you're just one game, Steelers playing for some hypothetical something, and on the quarterbacks you'd be most afraid of were on the other team, where would he rank? Because for me, he's not in the top three.
Hey, listen, all time, I mean, just even right now, if I know this isn't fair, but obviously if we're playing hypothetical, if all you told me was, I'm not telling you what the conditions are going to be, the weather conditions, if it's in a dome or otherwise, I don't know, I can't tell you if the offensive line is going to be any good, or how good the defense is going to be, and who the weapons are going to be. If all I could choose is the quarterback, Peyton Manning wouldn't be in my top three currently. That's for sure. Yeah,
well, but he's old. To be fair, he's old now. I mean, both him and Brady are past their peak. I know Manning had his best career year, but I don't think he's the same guy he was in 2004.
Tom Brady would still make my list for that guy. One game, 60 minutes, you got to win it. All I'm telling you is you get to pick the quarterback. Everything else is a mystery. I'll take Roethlisberger, I'll take Brady, and I'll take Aaron Rodgers. And by the way, everybody talks. The one thing I've noticed lately is, remember when Conan O'Brien was finishing up the Tonight Show, his last episode? He went on this bizarre little 5-minute jag right at the end before he played with the band. He went on this thing about cynicism, and it's easy to be cynical about things. And it is one of those kind of things. You and I have been in that Kimmel writers' room, and it's awfully the easiest position to take when other people are pitching ideas and jokes is to be the cynic and to just announce that won't work. And
right.
It makes people feel smart for shooting down other things, but in fact, it's the weapon of the dolt who has nothing to add himself. And I find it amazing that so many people immediately, as soon as the Rodgers threw that touchdown pass, it was stinking Bears. Chris Conte let Randall Cobb get behind him. What a blown coverage. What about the play Rodgers made there? 4th and 8 with the season on the line, and they send the house at him. They're not over, and they immediately collapse the offensive line. He just coolly steps to the left, goes around it, and then flips the playoff-sending touchdown pass with less than a minute to go. I mean, a crushing if you're the Bears, but awesome stuff if you're Aaron Rodgers. That's the narrative. That's the legacy. That Peyton Manning can put up whatever numbers he wants. I'll take Aaron Rodgers any day of the week.
Well, Sal and I talked about that pass before. I thought that was probably the best play of the season. I don't know how he threw that as far as he did when he had basically no balance at all. And he didn't really cock the ball back either. It was like he shot it from his hip like it was a gun or something. From my list, I would pick guys who could.
By the way, there is no one. You can talk about Kaepernick or Flacco or Stafford. No one can pull the trigger with the ease and put it on a rope the way Rodgers does. He is the best arm. He's the best. I gotta say it. Talk about it again. All the time, I predict when it's all done, Aaron Rodgers will be. In 25 years, who's the best quarterback of all time? Aaron Rodgers over Brady, over Montana, over Peyton, or anyone else.
Well, because that play was everything that he does well. The way he moved to the left to evade Peppers, but then keep his balance and be able to recover as fast as he did. Manning and Brady they just aren't the same kind of athlete.
And don't you know, and I know this is unfair if I'm beating up on Peyton now. I don't care at his best or in 2013. Either way, would he so coolly in that situation? What evidence do you have that in as big a moment as there could possibly be, namely the season is riding on this one play? What evidence is there with guys coming at him that hard that Peyton Manning would just sidestep and fling a touchdown pass? I see none of it. Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he's number one. Not now, but of all time.
I think Russell Wilson could have made that play.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And we don't really know what we have in Russell Wilson yet. He's been great. He seems to rise to the occasion. His weapons are terrible. I mean, he doesn't even have like a Jimmy Graham.
Yeah. Last time we spoke, I was berated by countless Simmons fans. What do you call your fan base, by the way? Do you have a nickname for it?
Well, for the podcast, I just call them the listeners. They're our loyal listeners.
We have the Czech Republic. See, now that's good. That has a ring to it.
I like that.
But anyway, the Simmons logs beat me up pretty good for trading Josh Gordon for Levy and Bell.
Yeah.
But the reason I did that was because of Percy Harvin. I thought Percy Harvin was going to be back and was going to be productive, and that's why I could give away Josh Gordon. Seahawks must be the same way. If they don't get him, all of a sudden, it's funny how one win or one loss changes everything. I think I'm the only person on the face of the earth that picked the Cardinals to go into Seattle in Week 16 and win. But I still thought, the Seahawks are still. I mean, listen, who's going to beat them in Seattle in January? Now I have some doubts. They don't. You talk about these prolific offenses. Seattle does not have that. Marshawn Lynch is a destroyer. I mean, he's maybe will be the great equalizer, but I'm not as confident, even though the 49ers have gotten whipped the last couple times they've been up there. I could see them going in there and beating them because of the Seahawks' inability to put up points when they need them. And I could see the same thing with the Packers for one 60-minute stretch. I could see Rodgers pulling that out. And maybe the Panthers, who are basically their mirror image, who are the Seahawks' mirror image at this point.
I think the Eagles could go in there. I have concerns about the Seahawks because, as you said, I think it's going to be tough for them to get to 30 points and for Carolina to get to 30 points in any playoff game unless they get help from defense and special teams. And they're just not explosive. They don't get the thing that's scary about Denver, and I think that the thing that's different about this year's Denver team versus last year's team is the amount of big plays they're getting. And like at any point on the field, they can rip off a 45-yarder. Somebody's always seems to be open. And that's something the Patriots didn't have these last, really since Moss kind of started to fade. It was just so tough in these big games for them to get big plays. They can get the 10, 11, 12-yard plays, but not those 35, 40-yarders that just, are just daggers. Wait, I never told you my top 3 QBs.
Oh, yeah, go.
I think Elway is my number 1. It's Elway versus Montana, and I've probably changed my mind on this a million times. The thing with Elway is just his ability to buy time. The quarterbacks that always scare me the most aren't the ones that are just the machines who go down the field, but also the ones like where you have them and it's 3rd and 12 and you call the perfect blitz and somehow they maneuver out of it and all of a sudden some guy changes his route and now it's first down because they just got a 25-yard play. Elway was the best at that. And Rodgers is right up there. And Russell Wilson is actually climbing the ladder for that too. But I'm always the most scared of those quarterbacks that can frustrate even the perfect defense and still get a first down. Those are the ones that drive me crazy.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I guess I don't know that there's ever been a guy who does both of those things really well. And maybe, you know what? Maybe it is Aaron Rodgers, the guy who does both of those things really well. But, you have the gunslinger versus the, I wouldn't say Brady or Manning or those guys or Montana or game managers. They're more machine-like in how efficient they are and accurate they are and so on. Whereas you have those guys that just throw, Elway, Favre, Roethlisberger, those kind of guys who just throw some dreadful passes. And you're like, what the hell was that? That was atrocious. And you kind of have to deal with that. I'm with you. I'll always take the latter there, and it's easy for me to say as a Steeler fan that that's what I like. I fully admit, obviously, that there are certain guys who or teams that own other guys or other teams, and it's hard to have to admit this, but Tom Brady owns the Steelers. But that being said, if I don't know what the circumstances are around the game, like I say, what kind of defense he's going against or how good the offensive line is. Aaron Rodgers and Ben Roethlisberger, to me, deserve more credit than I think what they get because they're compared to Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. And, in the same way that those guys have an unusually high, they eat up an unusually high amount of the salary cap for those teams. The one thing that they do well, both the Broncos and before that the Colts, and, the Patriots, they've always taken great care to protect their investment with getting a good offensive line. The Packers and Steelers have not done that very well at all. And it's like 5 years now for both those guys. They haven't played behind good offensive lines in forever. And I know the Steelers have gotten 8-8 the last couple of years, so it's not as good. But, both those guys have been, more or less perennial winners in spite of playing behind dreadful O-line. So they deserve a little more credit, I think. And it's the same sort of thing I think you're getting at with John Elway because, he didn't make a difference. I think of those Houston Oilers chasing him around and having a hand on him and pulling at his jersey and him shaking it off and throwing a pass. Again, you talk about not enough weapons. He was throwing to who is he throwing? Steve Watson? That's who he was throwing the big passes on those 2-minute drives to. I agree with you. Elway deserves more credit. People say he's probably a top 5 QB. To me, I think he's like a top, 2 or 3 all time. That I never saw Johnny Unitas play. I don't know if you remember his game.
I do not remember his game.
You have a longer memory than I do.
If Vance Johnson was involved, this is something that I don't think Brady gets enough credit for either. Because really, the only great receiver he ever played with was Randy Moss. Welker was a great slot receiver that never did anything close to what he ended up doing with the Pats. And then the 2 tight ends, obviously, who he was never able to really get going both at the same time for more than a season and a half. But they won 3 Super Bowls. It was like David Givens and David Patton, and Deion Branch was probably the best receiver of the first 6 years of his career as a starter. So it's a little similar to the Denver thing. Manning always had that one great receiver. He had, and for a lot of times he had 2. He had Harrison and Wayne, who were 2 of the all-timers.
This thing about this, well, first of all, I agree with you about Tom Brady. He doesn't get enough credit, although back to narrative and all that, everybody talks about how clutch Tom Brady is, and he is clutch, but it is still 9 years since he's done it. But I completely agree with you about the lack of weapons around him. And in fact, this year, my pal Daniel Jeremiah, the former scout, points out, I mean, this is really like LeBron with the Cavs level stuff that Tom Brady did this year. I mean, he
totally
really
agree.
has covered up some, a really mediocre roster. I mean, that is a really, forget about, look at what Tony Romo's done. Yeah, you have Des Bryant, and Jason Witten, and DeMarco Murray, and so on. I mean, Tom Brady does not have anything close to that in New England.
Well, and he also played. He got better the first 6-7 weeks. He really wasn't that good, especially by his standards.
Yeah,
he was way
he
below.
Did come out crummy. Yeah, you're right.
And he got it back together.
But the thing but again about Peyton Manning again, and I know I'm really bashing the guy, but for the record, it's not like I have some rooting interest against him. If I do have any as a fan, it would be against Tom Brady for causing me great pain over the years as a Steelers fan, especially in those two AFC title games. But the thing with Peyton Manning is when people say, well, he's never had a good defense, yeah, but it's offset by the fact, think about what he's had around him. And the talk about, people love to use that, like Magic Johnson made everybody better around him. Well, I think James Worthing and Kareem would have had a nice career, would have put together nice careers without Magic. But all right, I get the point. Tom Brady legitimately makes guys around him better. Peyton Manning came into the league with Marshall Faulk and quickly had Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, then Edge James, and Dallas Clark. All those guys, with the possible exception of Dallas Clark, would be all-time players. Without Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison wouldn't have been great if it weren't for Peyton Manning. Obviously, Reggie Wayne was able to go on pretty well with Andrew Luck throwing him passes. And, then he goes to Denver. He's had impossibly good luck, Peyton Manning has. I mean, he goes from that Indianapolis situation into Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, who's a stud with or without Peyton Manning. Look at what he did with Tim Tebow. And then you throw Wes Welker in there. And, some nice above-average running backs, or at least the one there. So, Tom Brady is not playing. It's not an even game that he's playing with Peyton Manning when those two hook
Well, and then you left out in Indy, he was playing indoors all his home games. I think that's the part that people forget with Brady and Rodgers when they they compare the stats and stuff. The 3 to 5 horrible weather games that those guys play in every year. Brady, Rodgers, Roethlisberger, versus like I saw today. Breeze is the first guy ever to have 4,000 or 5,000 yard seasons. I mean, he's playing in a dome in an offense that's built around him, It's like if Nash was playing in Paul Westhead's 1990 offense, and with rules that favored him, like he would have had 17 assists a game. Like, what does that ultimately mean? Anyway, it's an interesting topic. I think there's two sides to it. You and I seem to slant a little bit toward the Manning is the greatest regular season quarterback ever, but the postseason stuff really should matter. Other people feel differently. They feel like the postseason is more chance. You can't hang that stuff on him. The truth's probably somewhere in the middle. But wait, last thing. Who do you have for the Super Bowl?
Oh, who knows? I mean, listen.
Okay, good answer.
Really, at this point, it's loco, and I know parody is fun and makes it suspenseful, but I really feel like parody is a fancy word for
poop.
Mediocrity. I mean, there's not much of a difference between the really good. I mean, all you have to look at is in Week 17, the second string Chiefs almost beat the Chargers, who had everything to play for. The Falcons almost beat the Panthers, who were playing for everything. These games are so nip and tuck. I'll tell you, man.
Do you have a round one upset?
I'd love to pick the Bengals. I mean, well, I wouldn't love to because I'm not a fan of theirs, but I've been touting them since last November as the most talented team in the AFC, and I've been saying they win the North. But man, Andy Dalton, talk about, and that's another funny cliche. Everybody says that turnovers are the most important stat. In the last 2 weeks, Carson Palmer threw dreadful interceptions in Seattle, and they still won that game. Yeah. And then Andy Dalton throws all those dreadful picks against the Ravens, and it hardly matters. You know what? I'm going to do it. That defense in Cincy is for real. Let's go with the Bengals, just to stand by what I've been saying now.
Wow, you're riding Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. But you know who's another one? If it weren't for Andy Reid, I would really love those Chiefs, because even though they've lost 2 in a row, that I still could see things breaking. Just can't you see Jamal Charles really gashing the Broncos in the postseason? I could really see that happening.
Well, when would they play though? They would be. That'd be round 2, right? Round 2, unless the Chargers won.
Yeah, let's say as long as the Chargers don't beat the Bengals, then that would be Patriots, and so then the winner of Colts, which would be fun too.
I don't know what to make of the Pats, because we've lost so many guys, and it passed the point of being comical a while ago. But there's a resilience that they have that makes me. It's just too hard to count them out. Like, it doesn't matter who they lose. It's like the next guy comes in and they just kind of keep going, you know?
I do agree with you, and it's crazy that it's happened. But like I mentioned the last time I was on the show, it is the if you take even the QBs out of it, football now, pro football is now the great Jenga game, and you never know which piece that you remove is going to cause the collapse. It's been some teams, I feel like, Von Miller goes down. To me, that's it for the Broncos. They need a playmaker on defense. They now don't have it. They can't win 3 straight games without having any defense whatsoever. I feel like, and then when Gronkowski got hurt, a lot of people said, well, that's it for the Patriots. To me, Will Fork and Mayo going out were more significant. So it was like you take those 2 pieces away, and it did one of those things when you play Jenga where it sort of sways and you can see it going down like, it's going down, and it crashed. And I think that even though when Peyton lost in Foxborough, I think what you saw was that some team is gonna destroy the Patriots on the ground. And maybe the other team is a same thing. I could see the Bengals or the Chiefs doing that. I could just see them gashing the Patriots all day long on the ground.
Well, what's interesting with the Jenga analogy, I thought the Bengals, when they lost Geno Atkins and Leon Hall, I thought that was going to be the Jenga moment for them. And if anything, their defense didn't seem like it really suffered at all.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that has to do. Yeah, it's those teams have the teams that have depth. When we talk about, like you say, week 20 of the NFL season, and the attrition is legit now. It's not like in the olden days, and by olden days I mean 8 or 9 years ago, when if a team lost one key piece, you thought like, wow, what a terrible liability. Now everybody has injuries, so nobody can use injuries as the excuse.
You lose 20 to 40% of your best players every year. It seems like it's just
that's exactly right. And so if you accept that reality, then it kind of makes sense. Like, you talk about, do you need a defense to win the Super Bowl? Clearly not. Do you need a top 5 QB? Joe Flacco won last year, and Eli Manning won the year before. Maybe the reality is now is that the deepest teams are the ones that are going to win it all. That if you lose the guy that you can throw in there, and those 2 teams to me are the Bengals and the Seahawks, so I guess that will be my pick then, is Bengals Seahawks. But I will say, talk about that thing of getting getting healthy at just the right time. The 49ers are doing that, aren't they? I mean, if they got all those weapons going, and I wouldn't be surprised if Greg Roman and company suddenly unveil a lot more of the read option that Colin Kaepernick was killing teams with last year. It's kind of like that story. I thought all in the offseason, this is going to be huge. Whoever can run that is going to have a sizable advantage. But then you didn't see teams even really trying it too much this year. Maybe in January, that's when it's going to come back, and it's going to be like, well, we have to protect the investment. We can't have Kaepernick taking shots every week. But maybe in January, it's like that's where we bring it out, and that's where we roll with it. And if that happens, maybe the Niners get it done this year. And then if that happens, maybe we anoint Jim Harbaugh the best coach in the NFL, because he's got NFC title game, should have been in the Super Bowl, went to the Super Bowl, was a play away from winning it. If he does something this year, then I think it's hard to argue he's probably the best guy in the game.
I haven't decided on my pick yet. I want to try to find a team that can win all types of games because I think that's what it takes in the playoffs.
It's interesting. Yeah,
I don't think you can win with one style. I want a team that can win 17-10 and a team that can win 42-35. And if you're just thinking about it from that standpoint, then you would say Seattle, and you probably wouldn't say anyone in the AFC. I don't think anyone in the AFC can play those two types of games.
I think it's mass mediocrity in the AFC, clearly. I think the Packers, Panthers, Seahawks, and
Panthers are a good
good
example. The Panthers can't play a 42-35 game.
Yeah, that's right. I know. Wouldn't that be that would be an interesting one to see. I will tell you, because I've been touting Rodgers for so long, I'd like to be validated since I've been saying this is. I mean, I said 5 years ago before he won. I said this guy is going to go down as the best ever. But now I hate to say it. It makes me sick to have to concede this. But as a human being, as an adult, I have to come to grips with the fact that Tom Brady seems like an unusually cool guy. Seems like a really cool, nice, thoughtful, decent guy who is the kind of guy you would want to talk. The way he talks about his team and winning, and the way he takes the losses as hard as he does. I think I feel like I have to root for Tom Brady.
I appreciate
and conversely, if I may demonize somebody who is held in such high regard for the last time, Peyton Manning. What does it say about Peyton Manning? He cares, first of all, he cares way too much about the stats. Clearly, he is a guy who looks at them. I really believe Tom Brady probably knows the stats and sees where he ranks and everything. But Peyton Manning is acutely aware of that. I've talked to a lot of people who've been close to him over the years, and they say, yeah, make no mistake, Peyton Manning cares about his numbers and where he ranks historically. That's a problem as far as I'm concerned. And here's another problem. Here's a telltale about Peyton Manning. He takes every snap. He doesn't let anybody else take any snaps. What kind of team guy is that? He never rotates in anybody else to take first-team snaps. The Colts go down 2 years ago, and everybody says, well, let's see, doesn't that show Peyton Manning why he's the most valuable player? Look what happened. Look how they created with Curtis Painter. Yeah, well, what was going to happen? No one ever was given a chance to even get a feel for that. You know, nobody had any idea what those guys weren't accustomed to ever being under center. When you make everything about you, then you have to come through in January. I cannot wait to see if it happens this year. My only sorrow is that Tony Romo isn't going to be there to be a part of the proceeding.
Or Ben Roethlisberger.
Ben Roethlisberger would be a little bit better.
Well, I wasn't expecting you to take this anti-Manning corner like this. It seems like even I am much more in the middle than you are on this. At least
I think he's great. I agree with you. I'm not diminishing that he is. You know, again, I think you put it exactly right. He's the greatest regular season quarterback of all time. But I bristle when I point out, you know, not my opinion, when I point out the obvious, what his numbers are in the postseason versus the regular season. That's bad. I mean, you know, if you're an all-time great, you must rise. Not only must you maintain your level, it's not even good enough to maintain. You must play better when the games matter, don't you? Or again, like I say, then let's just gather around the computer and swoon over the numbers together and cancel the Super Bowl.
Yeah, what you just said didn't help Brady's cause the last 10 years. Maybe Brady, maybe Brady will rally. Who knows? Dave Dameshek, we'll check you out on NFL.com and NFL Network, especially I know you do your picks. You've had some good ones lately.
Yes, thank you. Well, yeah, and we, if I may promote, we on the Dave Dameshek football program, we're talking with our favorite. He just won the Shecky Award for our favorite guest. Is Packers AJ Hawk, a real delight.
Oh.
We'll break down the Rodgers heroics in Soldier Field yesterday.
Beautiful.
And look ahead to the whole playoffs. So, yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you for your time. Sorry about the Steelers. We'll talk to you later in the playoffs.
All right. Best wishes to you and your team.
Thanks, buddy.
Target to set off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
Hey, what you got there, Golick?
The new Subway Chipotle chicken melt with guacamole.
Man, that looks good.
Yeah, this new guac is really bringing the flavor.
Got one for me too, right?
Well, yes and no. Mostly no. Well, really, all no.
Try the irresistible new Subway Chipotle Chicken Melt with guacamole, juicy grilled chicken strips with Monterey Cheddar, Chipotle Southwest sauce, and new guacamole made from ripe Hass avocados with just a hint of jalapeno. Subway, eat fresh.